There's absolutely nothing going on around the West Virginia football program. You know I'm full of it. Jonathan Martin and I have a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about, or today, we're recording this at night, we're going to talk about all the coaching chaos going on around the West Virginia Mountaineer program. Is Jimbo or Rich Rod coming to Morgantown? Are they not coming to Morgantown? Who should come to Morgantown? We're going to talk about all that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the recruiting class West Virginia was able to nail down in spite of the fact they don't even have a coach. And we're going to talk a little bit about the bowl game. The very exciting Frisco Bowl that West Virginia is going to be playing in on December the 17th, 2024. Jonathan, what's up, man?
What's going on, Couz? So you, I think, are famous for the phrase of belling yourself up to the bar and pouring a nice drink. Now would probably be a good time.
Really?
Just don't drink too quickly because we have a lot to discuss.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. We were hoping to even talk a little hoops on this tonight's show, but we're not going to. I don't think we're even going to be able to touch that. Well, there's so much other stuff going on around football.
Yeah, but, it's kind of fallen at a weird time. Coaching change, recruiting class, bowls, a lot going on for sure.
Yep. Before we get into what everybody wants to talk about, which is the coaching situation, I'm going to take about 35 seconds and give a quick shout out to the channel sponsor. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. All right. We're back. Thank you for being patient, letting us get through the housekeeping. All right, Jonathan. Neal Brown's been gone, 3 days now? 4 days?
Yep.
Whatever it's been. A lot of speculation on who the next head football coach is going to be at West Virginia. You've got some people, I guess one side of the rumor mill saying it's going to be Jimbo. You have another side of the rumor mill saying it's going to be Rich Rod. You have Hoppy Kercheval saying it's not going to be either one of them. You have Ross Dellinger saying, hey, it could be Rich Rod, but it's not going to be Jimbo. You have Wren Baker saying we're going to cast a wide net and talk to a lot of people. What the heck is going on?
Yeah, so I guess you and I are here to put the pieces of the puzzle together and solve all the problems in West Virginia world.
That's right. so and we better get paid for it too, buddy.
Yeah, there you go. You know, so I'm glad you mentioned Wren Baker's press conference. It was interesting in the fact of you almost felt like you could walk away with maybe getting a glimpse into not who he wanted, but the type of coach he was looking for. Mm-hmm. And then there is the argument that maybe we're just reading a little bit too much into it.
Yep.
I guess here's kind of my overall thought on the process, right? Is that when you're looking at a candidate for the job, you've got a couple options you want to go with. One of the options is, I'll just start by saying a head coach, current head coach at maybe a lower level. When I say a lower level, when you get into Liberty, when you get into Tulane, when you get into some of those schools, Memphis, their coach has been kind of thrown around a little bit. The concern there is it's always, and it always is, but the concern there is it's literally a flip of a coin, right? Mm-hmm. And you run the risk of hearing is this not Neal Brown 2.0? Right. I mean, Neal had some success at Troy, and then it just didn't translate. And so you do run the risk there of, are we just repeating the same cycle again and having to sell that person without the taste of here we go again? Mm-hmm. I think the other option is you go out and you get a quality coordinator. Maybe they've not had head coaching experience. Maybe a Kotelnicki at Penn State, or some other people that are out there that maybe they lack that head coaching experience, but they've got significant coordinator experience at a very high level.
Mm-hmm.
The third option is you go out and you get somebody that is a current head coach at a higher level and or has coached at a higher level. And then all those roads lead back to Rich Rodriguez and Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah.
I would say that I lean more in the category of, if we're being transparent, I don't know how much involvement is there, but there is involvement there.
Yeah.
I think we can put enough pieces of the puzzle there together to say we can't tell you how far deep they are in the conversations, but they're in them. Mm-hmm. Both, I think, have openly expressed a desire, as openly as you could. Rich Rod is currently employed by Jacksonville State. But Couz, if you follow West Virginia and you're watching this show, you've seen Pat McAfee talk about Rich Rodriguez. You've seen Pac-Man Jones talk about Rich Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. They glow when they start talking about him. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, just the overwhelming sense is you've got three choices. Wren talked about he's going to make the best decision for the school to lead the program, regardless of which category of those you fall into. But it is interesting to see which route he decides to go. Do I have a preference? I'll say this. At first, I was a little bit I don't want to say skeptical. That's probably the wrong word. I don't know that I was quite all in on Jimbo or Rich Rod. I just kind of thought now may not be the time. Do you want to go back and revisit something that you had? But even though we're 3 or 4 days into this and I've kind of stewed on it a little bit, and maybe nostalgia kicks in a little bit, and maybe you think, you know what, I don't get the argument that Jimbo Fisher wasn't that good of a coach. Maybe that's just me. I actually kind of see the opposite of that. There's intrigue there. My mind rambles when I think of Rich Rodriguez and what could be with the former players that he had. And then imagine Jimbo walking into the recruit with some bling on the hand. What does that say? I don't know where West Virginia goes, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about it yet. But it's getting interesting.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I started out thinking, okay, I've been somewhat pro Jimbo the whole time. He wasn't necessarily my first choice going in. I've been kind of leaning towards. I had been kind of leaning towards the Andy Kotelnicki, great coordinator, something different, right? Then I heard Wren yesterday, and I'm thinking more about this thing, communicating with people on social media and those types of things, and you get ideas and you get different trains of thought, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And the more I think about this, do you really want to go down the road of hiring another G5 coach like you just did?
Yeah.
I think that's a huge risk right now at this point.
Yeah.
Because of where we are, right? Do you want to take a chance, an even bigger risk, and hire a coordinator who has no coaching experience? Maybe they can run a program, maybe they can't. You don't know that. It's a huge, you're gambling, rolling the dice, right? Which it's all a roll of the dice to a degree, but I think, there's obviously levels to this thing, right? And I was actually communicating with somebody on Twitter earlier, and they said, well, it's a huge risk to hire Jimbo or Rich. And I'm thinking, how is that a bigger risk than hiring somebody who's never even coached at the Power 4 level before?
Yeah.
And I mean, Jimbo has won a national championship. I think there are 5 or maybe 6 coaches alive today. Well, I shouldn't say alive, but there's less than 10, I think.
Yeah.
But you can count on 2 hands how many living coaches have won a national title.
Yeah.
Right. He's one of them. Those don't just fall out of trees for you. Right.
They don't.
You get a coach who's had top 10 and even top 5 and even top 1 recruiting classes in the entire country. Those don't fall out of trees every day. And I know everybody's argument is, well, they had all that Texas oil money. Well, you know what? Texas A&M's always had a lot of Texas oil money, and they've never won more than 8-9 games a year.
Yeah,
until they hired Jimbo Fisher.
They're going to win 10. They're going to win 8 this year.
Yeah, with a lot of Jimbo's recruits, by the way,
and another coach that they thought was going to turn it around,
and one of his former assistants, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it was a Jimbo problem as much as it was a Texas A&M problem. And honestly, I think their expectations were way too high, if you want my honest opinion. I think Texas A&M is stuck in that mode of what most other SEC teams have done over the years, trying to beat Alabama. Everybody's target was Nick Saban in Alabama, and nobody was ever able to reach it until obviously Georgia did. But I mean, look how many coaches got fired at Tennessee and Ole Miss and all these other schools because nobody could beat Nick Saban on a consistent basis, right?
Yeah.
Texas A&M's never been that. Texas A&M has been a 8-9 win team or worse for most of their existence.
Yeah.
And they've been have they not been in Texas the whole time?
Yeah, and here's one kind of interesting fact too that I don't think people are quite. I don't want to say they're not grasping, but they're not attaching themselves to. Everybody wants to go back to Jimbo's recruiting class and wasn't able to quote win with that class.
Mm-hmm.
One key point to that though is if you go back and look at that class, how many SEC schools were maybe number 3, 4, 6, 8? And the separation there, Couz, between where a number 1 class and a number 4 class, that separation, it's not like there's all of a sudden a number 1, number 2 class, and then the next second was 14th, right?
Yeah.
So had a really good class, but the other teams, they weren't in the lower end of the rankings either. So that's still extremely competitive. I said on one of our shows, and Mercy knows we've had several of them in the last 4 or 5 days since news broke, that this would actually be, I think, before West Virginia officially announced that Neal was gone. I said, right after the Texas Tech game, I joined you on a show, and I said, I'm just not quite sure how Wren can sell Neal coming back next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of feel that same way if you went out and got a coach from Troy again, if you got a coach from Memphis, or if you got somebody for Liberty or where it may be. Does it not feel like you're going to still kind of be attached to the sales job of what's not Neal? It's not Neal. This is a different version of Neal. Does that make sense, Couz?
Yeah, it does make sense. No, it's exactly right. And that's you explain it much better. I was trying to explain that. I just didn't do it as eloquently. But yes, it's with seeing and that transitions kind of to Rich Rod. With Rich Rod, I get all these people on Twitter. Well, you say you don't want a G5 coach. Is he not a G5 coach?
Yeah.
But how many G5 coaches have also won at the Power 4 level?
Yeah.
He has. And he didn't win at Arizona. Go look at Arizona's record before Rich Rod got there. And look at their record after. He won more games than the coach before him and the coach after him. At Arizona. Arizona, it's not like Arizona is a football blue blood. Arizona's not even on the level of West Virginia historically as a football program. And he went there and won about 7 games a year.
Yeah.
Including a 10-win season, and competed for a conference championship. And he rebuilt something I didn't even know, but I heard Skylar Callahan and Eugene Napoleon talking about it on their show earlier. He got their facilities upgraded. It's one of the first things he did when he got there. He helped get money raised and got a facilities upgrade there. They had one of the top facilities in the country while Rich Rod was there, and he helped do that. And
the argument is going to be Michigan. But because I think if we're just being honest with ourselves, that wasn't a good fit. It never was. It never was. At that time, Rich was probably the innovator of the spread offense, or one of
them, yes.
And if he wasn't the guy, he kind of took it to the next level with the players he had at West Virginia. That style was never going to work at Michigan. You could go back as not a Michigan man, that was from day one when they hired him. And so I lean more towards that was an outlier, and I would almost push that back against the success that he's had at Jacksonville State. I mean, that I don't think that he gets enough credit for what he's been able to do there and their rise up to the level that they're at right now. That's a tiny school, and those guys work, and he's had some serious success there. So, yeah, to me, the question is with Couz is, and I think if we've learned anything through this, we can trust whoever the hire is.
Yes.
We can trust Wren Baker to make the right decision. And ultimately, if it is somebody that does it, and I want to be fair to the next guy, I'm not trying to paint it as Neal Brown 2.0. When I say that, because I'm talking about just the totality of the coach, right? The resume and the history of that coach. So I think that most fans, the majority of fans, will be fair that they're going to trust Wren, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't think that was in the back of their mind. So I think we can agree that we trust Wren through everything he's done at West Virginia. It's early, but it looks that he has nailed Darren DeVries on the hoop side of things. And so I trust him to make the call. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I wasn't coming around on – and when I say coming around on Rich Rodriguez and Jimbo, it's not that I never was there. It's just that my first thought didn't go there because I thought –
yeah,
I don't want to say it wasn't an option, but I thought just something fresh, something new. But then the more I think about it, the more I see former players rallying around him, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Well, think about this. To me, our fan base is in a place right now. You need to make a splash, in my opinion. If you want to bring West Virginia football back to national relevance again, get them back in the national conversation, get the fan base excited, get the boosters and donors excited, you need to make a splash, right? There are only 2, 3, 4, maybe 2 names on this list that'll make a splash, and it's Jimbo and Rich Rod. Now, Jimbo would make a splash because, like we talked about, the national title rings, and he's Jimbo. He's a little bit of a polarizing figure to a degree. He's very outspoken. He's very popular because of his contract at A&M and, the spat he got into with Nick Saban and, all the national title, all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then Rich Rod, we've heard Pat McAfee push for him. You mentioned Pac-Man earlier. Can you imagine the notoriety? And I think Pat McAfee's going to help the program regardless of who's the coach.
Yeah.
But I think he would probably be even more excited about helping them if Rich Rod's the guy leading them.
100%.
We know Ken Kendrick would do the same thing, right? The biggest donor for West Virginia. In today's college football, what is the number one resource you need to be successful?
Need some money.
Money. Hiring Rich Rod is going, in my opinion, you're going to get – now you're going to have probably 40% of the fan base that are – well, they say they're going to refuse to buy tickets, right, which I'll get to that in a minute. But then you might have the other 60% that are probably going to increase their support for the program, and the donors are going to increase. The major donors will increase support. You'll have Rich Rod on the Pat McAfee show all the time probably. You'll have Pat McAfee doing shows in Morgantown every year. I mean, there'll be all kinds of just a PR. It'd be a great PR. I mean, you heard Wren talk about it. Hey, Pat's bringing millions of dollars worth of publicity to our program and our university all the time. So, of course, we're going to entertain his phone call, right?
Yeah.
I think that would increase even more under Rich Rod.
Yeah. And I made a comment on one of your on one of your live shows that I don't want to say I regret saying it because I felt like I was accurate in what I meant by it. But I made the comment, for example, if there was no affiliation with Rich Rod in West Virginia, would he be considered for this job? Like, for instance, is he considered a UNC job and some of these other ones? And what I meant by that was, if we were just doing a resume builder, could we name other people that were maybe more impressive or a different direction? I think the answer to that is yes. But, the more I thought about that, and that's kind of what I go to as that I'm intrigued or that I've come around a little bit more, is I've come to realize through the last 3 or 4 days is that you can't hide the connection. And to your point, it is the connection of the Pat McAfees and the Pac-Man Jones and the Pat Whites and, all these guys. I mean, Roman sidelines or the weekly spot on the Pat McAfee show. And so, the more I have thought about it is you can't hide that. And so I'm definitely intrigued by it. I think that I saw where Pat McAfee said he was really careful not to put pressure on Wren. And to his credit, he stated he didn't want to do that. He was just saying, hey, this is somebody that's interested. This person's interested. And according to him, there's a lot of people that are interested in it. Yeah. I just could West Virginia do better? I think that's to be seen, right? I mean, I don't know that you could. It's like drafting a player in okay, we're going to talk recruiting. Today, we don't know what these young men are going to turn out to be 2, 3, 4 years from now. Mm-hmm. But on the surface, that's two pretty solid candidates for the job that you just can't dismiss. And oh, by the way, they just happen to be from here.
Yeah, like I was debating somebody on X earlier, and they were saying the only reason y'all want him is because he coached here and is from here. And I said, okay, let's just imagine and it's hard to do this because it's theoretical, but I said, imagine for a minute he coached at a different school in the Big East. Okay, not West Virginia. He had four coach of the year, 4-time conference champions in 7 years. Coach of the year multiple times, I think. 3 10-win seasons. The number of wins he had. Let's just say he did that at a different school. Had the same career path he had now, same success at Jacksonville State. His resume would probably still be better than most of the other people mentioned for this job.
Yeah.
It just happened to be that he did it here.
Yeah.
And I heard Wren Baker say today on the Hoppy Kercheval show on Talk Line. He said, being from West Virginia, he said, if all things are equal, that might be a tiebreaker. I don't even know that it's equal.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a bonus that you get.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not trying to poo-poo the Jamie Chadwells of the world. I think Jamie Chadwell's a great football coach. But I think for this moment in time, as where we are as a program, and I say we like I'm part of it. Everybody knows what I mean. I'm a fan, but
yeah,
where the program is at this point in time, after what we just went through with Coach Brown, the foundation he has somewhat laid to a degree. Got to give him some credit for that. As far as culture and whatnot, that'll be a good segue into our next discussion. I think they need somebody that's a bigger name, a bigger splash, that's been there, that's done it. And the only 2 people on that list, you could argue Barry Odom has, but he went 500 as a Power 4 coach. Rich Rod's way better than 500. Jimbo obviously is much better than 500 and has a national championship ring. To me, you stack the resumes up, and those 2 guys are above everybody else. And and like you said, it just so happens to be they're from this state, and that adds even more.
And
check marks beside their name.
Sure. And then you have to be cognizant, Couz, of the fact that we're obviously very prideful at West Virginia, but you also have to be careful with who you hire and maybe what their aspirations are. Is West Virginia going to be considered a stepping stone? There's no secret, if you listen to some people and you kind of connect dots, that Jamie Chadwell, for example, Summerall from Tulane, who's been kind of tied in. Those guys they're really excited about trying to get in that SEC job. And so, and listen, I'm sure Wren's I think he's smarter than both of us. I'm sure this has crossed his mind.
Oh yeah, well,
that you got to be really careful too. That you're not going to hire somebody that all of a sudden has 2 years of success, and then all of a sudden, and if I can use it for lack of a better term, is that's kind of what got us in this mess. Is that Neal had some success, he was extended because they were afraid that he was going to get poached.
Yeah,
and then it's almost kind of just build up,
right.
up. So I guess where I'm going with that is, if it's a deciding factor between somebody like a Chadwell or somebody like that versus a Rich Rodriguez, that you feel pretty darn good that if Rich comes and has success in 2 or 3 years, he's not going to bolt on you. And real quick, maybe before we move on, I just want to make a point you said earlier about some of the fans, that if it were to be Rich Rodriguez, that they wouldn't be happy, they maybe wouldn't go or whatever. Here's what I think. First off, I think you don't want to dismiss that, right? West Virginia fans are prideful. They're passionate. They love the game. They love the football program. I wouldn't want to push back against their feelings towards that. I get it. So I do think that Rich Rodriguez, if he were to get hired, also has an obligation, and that's at opening press conference. It'd be kind of weird to talk about it, but at the same time, it's the elephant in the room, right? I don't think you just have to come out and explain, hey, at 3 o'clock on this day, I decided. I don't think you have to detail that, but I think that you can coordinate at it in a sense of where Rich presents it to the fan base of why he's glad to be home. Maybe, I don't want to say admit a mistake, but just kind of, where I'm going with that, just kind of explain himself a little bit more.
Yeah. Apologize for not doing a press conference, which he has talked about.
And he has talked about that. And so I think it would be a good opportunity to rally everybody together. And so I want to be on both sides of that. I don't think that we can just dismiss people's frustrations about that. Those are legitimate to me.
Yeah.
But I think they have an obligation to feel that way and to be able to come around. And I think Rich would have an obligation to address that. And I won't say apologize, but to explain himself and hopefully move forward if that is who they choose.
Where they go. Yeah. And that's a great point. And, and again, anybody who doesn't want Rich Rod as a coach because of that, because of how he left, or because of his off the field controversies and, some of the NCAA violations his teams have had, which have all been minor, but stuff like that, those are all super fair arguments to me to make.
Sure.
I mean, you can't, those are facts. Some of it's known, some of it he's admitted. Some of the allegations I don't, probably were not true, but some of it he has admitted. But to say he's not qualified for the job, to me, just doesn't pass the sniff test. At least not to me. Again, I'm not trying to dismiss other people's opinions, but to me, when you look at the resumes of all the people, the Andy Kotelnickis, the Jamie Chadwells, the Jason Candles, you just go down the list, whoever.
Yeah, sure.
Nobody has done what he's done. He's not even done what Jimbo's done. If you want to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Rich Rod has the second best resume on that list. Jimbo has the best resume on that list.
Yep. It's true.
And so you hire either one of those guys to be the coach. This guy right here would be stoked with either one of them. Now, that being said, if Wren decides to go another direction and hire somebody else, I'm still going to support the program, the team. I'm still going to be there, right? Just like I always have been.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to be a little more excited if it's one of those two guys. I have to admit.
And I agree. I've come around to that. I share your sentiments exactly. I'm going to be excited for just a breath of fresh air either way.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I have thought about it, man, there's something kind of exciting about it, right?
It is. I mean, like me and I've talked to some other people earlier today. I want to be careful not to get my hopes up too high and be like, it's got to be him or I'm going to be let down. I don't want to do that to myself, because if you look at Wren's history, he may hire somebody that is
we're not
on
even
our radar.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. They're probably still going to be really good, but it may be somebody that's not even on our radar. So, and I don't want to, bash or, assume that person's going to be a bad coach just because they're not Jimbo or Rich Rod. It's just the history of it, and the fact they're from West Virginia adds to it, man. It's you can't get away from that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think whoever it is, whether it's a Rich Rod, a Jimbo Fisher, a Barry Odom, a Jamie Chadwell, Kotelnicki, whoever it is, or if it's somebody that we're not even talking about on a hot board or a show, I think the best course of action for everybody once it's announced is to blank slate it, and for everybody to just kind of jump in together and support. So I'm like you, not getting my hopes up, because I do trust Wren's hire will be the hire that he feels is the best hire moving forward. I'm just excited to find out who it is, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I wouldn't be a little more excited if it wasn't Rich Rod or Jimbo.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Now,
we could talk about this forever.
We could, but we do need to give some flowers to the current staff members at West Virginia.
Yes. Yeah.
And the outgoing head coach and Wren Baker for what they have done to nail down this 2025 signing class that everybody thought was going to fall apart. I mean, and and fairly, right? Because we didn't have a head coach, right on the eve of signing day. Lo and behold, they go out and land 21. They sign, not just commit, sign 21 guys. Only lost 3. I think they got 3 guys that didn't sign that had committed, but they flipped 2.
Yeah.
And went out and got 1 that was not committed. So, and by the way, he was a 4-star.
Yeah.
And the one they flipped was a high 3-star that was highly recruited by a lot of other Power 4 schools. Just an absolutely marvelous job of this staff. Trey Nair and his recruiting staff, all the assistant coaches. And again, Wren, I think he got on the phone with a few of them himself, and he gave them the directive, look, you guys do well by West Virginia University, and we'll do well by you. And they took that to heart, and they did it. They showed integrity. They showed the kind of character they have by doing what they did, because they didn't have, they could have melded in or just did it halfway and moved on to their next opportunity, knowing that Neal would probably hire him wherever he went, right?
Yep.
But they didn't do that,
Yeah.
So just what are your thoughts? I don't want to ramble too long. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Just remarkable, honestly, Couz. So for those that don't know, I've been around the recruiting world for West Virginia for a long time. I mean, we're talking all the way back to the Taj Boyd, Logan Hasty, to the William Crest days. Yes, I'm that old. The light does a pretty good job of hiding some of this gray, but I am that old.
That's why I just shave it off.
So, I'm getting there. So I haven't covered as much in depth over the last 4 or 5 years. Just personal job and stuff has kind of pulled me away from that. But I've been around it for a long time. I think what we saw this National Signing Day for West Virginia could possibly be one of the most remarkable things I have ever seen. And I don't say that lightly. In what we would probably deem the most awkward or inconvenient or whatever word you want to input there of scenarios for this staff and the recruiting staff to be met with some fate of Neal Brown on Sunday, and quite frankly not know their own fate about where they're going to be, to actively engage themselves in these young men, to still convince them in a vision, and to finish the job is impressive. Is probably not even a strong enough of a word. It's remarkable, and they deserve a ton of credit for that. As of National Signing Day, there were a couple, as you said, there were a couple of commitments that backed off that after Neal's firing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you woke up on signing day, you had 19 kids committed, and all 19 signed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to flip somebody without a head coach to steal, I guess at one point the Dwayne Galloway Jr., a 4-star kid, was committed to Purdue. So if you want to consider that a flip, to hold on to kids, just unbelievably impressive. Their efforts, Wren Baker's efforts, who made himself available to talk to these players. It just was fascinating to see, really. If you look at other schools in similar situations, you take a look at North Carolina, you take a look at Purdue, and you take a look at, I think it was Central Florida. I want to be careful with this stat because I might get it wrong, but I saw today it felt like around lunchtime, around noon, almost at noon o'clock. It's been a long day. Somewhere around noon on signing day, Keenan Cummings at Rivals had put out a tweet that to the effect said Central Florida, Purdue, and North Carolina had only signed like 4, 5, 6 kids.
I've got the numbers in front of me, or I can get them up.
Yeah. And so I thought when I saw that while you're pulling that up, I thought to myself, that just speaks even louder volumes to the job and the effort and the vision that this staff did. But West Virginia at that time was probably 15, 17 kids in. These other schools in similar situations had 4, 5, and 6. Just impressive.
UCF ended up signing 13.
Okay.
They have the lowest rated class in the Big 12. West Virginia ended with the 6th highest rated class this is according to 24/7 Sports, by the way.
Yeah.
Rivals may be slightly different, but they have it that 6th rated class in the Big 12 with 21 commits, 2 3-stars. They had a normal signing class. Just like their program was stable and everything was normal.
Yeah. And some of these, they were able to hold on to a defensive lineman, Taylor Brown, out of Maryland. I think he was a 4-star. He was the highest rated kid in the class. There was an offensive lineman again, Eden Buchanan.
Yep.
Michigan wanted him up until the day before signing day. And Couz, I just don't know how much credit we can give this staff that without a head coach. And I want to pause there too, and I want to say something because we've talked about this. Our displeasure with Neal Brown was always performance related on the field. It was wins and losses. We've stated that, and I don't need to go back into that again. But by all accounts, one of Neal's last messages to everybody, including that, is finish the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just speaks a ton of class to him, that he was engaged, literally even after the fact of probably hearing about his termination, that he was on him to get these young men to West Virginia. So kudos to him as well. But just a tremendous job by this staff to get. And then obviously there'll be another signing period in February. By that time, I would expect West Virginia, I would hope, to have a head coach by then, and that would be extremely portal heavy, I'm sure, at that time.
Yeah.
But just a great group of young men to add to give the next coach something to work with.
Yeah. And we're not going to talk about every signee, but we'll talk about a few of them in a minute. But to keep, I pulled up the numbers. I told you UCF where they were. North Carolina only got 9 commits today.
Yeah. I mean,
they're dead last in the ACC. They had a worse day than UCF.
So that's dead last in the Big 12 and dead last in the ACC.
Yep. Now let's look at Purdue.
And I would imagine
dead last in the Big 10 8 commits.
I mean,
they were the worst of the 4.
What's that? 13, 9, and 8. Dead last. Okay, so UCF had 13. West Virginia had 19. North Carolina had 9. West Virginia 19. Purdue had 8. West Virginia 19. Dead last in the Big 12. Dead last in the ACC. Dead last in the Big 10. And West Virginia finished
6th in the Big 12.
247.
Yeah.
I mean, I could sit here
with
and
an overall
ramble.
score of over 203.
Yeah. And so I could sit here and ramble about my thoughts on it. But I think at that point, the numbers speak to itself of how just unbelievably remarkable that staff at West Virginia did.
And West Virginia was 41st nationally, by the way, for those who are wondering.
Wow.
That's all.
Which was going to put them right on target.
Yeah,
where they were. Like you said.
That's about where they are annual. I mean, they're always anywhere from 30th to 50th somewhere, typically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Very, very rarely do they get out of the 40s, but they're normally 30, 40, maybe 45, somewhere in there. TCU had the best class in the Big 12 at 23rd and nationally.
Wow.
So that was impressive. But they had 30. They signed 30 guys.
There you go.
In all fairness.
Yeah.
Next in the Big 12 was Baylor. They were 34th nationally. Signed 21.
Okay.
Kansas State right behind them at 35th nationally. Signed 25. Colorado at 37th. Only signed 14, but they had 6 4-stars to help that number. Utah at 38. Man, the Big 12 was just so daggone even. Utah had 38, 23 signees, 3 4-stars. And then you go down to 41. There's West Virginia, 21. It says 2 4-stars, but when you click over on the team ratings, it's showing 3. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which it is. I think there might be a little bit of a typo here on one of these pages, but yeah, just impressive, man. I mean, can't say enough about the staff and Neal and Wren and all them. Is there one? Let's talk about Galloway, for Dwayne Galloway. You mentioned him earlier.
Yeah,
he's the 4-star that he had previously committed to Purdue and then uncommitted, and then didn't commit to anybody until recommit to anybody until today when he signed with the Mountaineers.
Yeah,
he's really fast for one. But what else stands out about him?
Yeah, I pulled a little bit of stuff up on him, Couz. 16 touchdowns and finished with almost 1,500 all-purpose yards. Mm-hmm. 247 and ESPN both had him as a 4-star player. But again, like a lot of these athletes in high school, played both ways. 37 tackles, 2 interceptions. Did have one of those interceptions was a touchdown return. So, yeah, extremely, extremely fast. I thought it was pretty interesting. ESPN tabbed him as the number 9 player in Ohio. And I think everybody thinks that Ohio's got some pretty darn good high school football players. Yeah. So when you're inside the top 10 in the state of Ohio, that's a pretty good get right there.
24/7 has him at 10, and they have him 28th nationally at his position.
Yeah.
4-star. They said he runs. I was listening to Chris Anderson's interview with Trey Nair earlier, and he runs a sub. He ran a 10, like a 10 400-meter dash or something insane number.
Yeah. According to the official WSports.com, the West Virginia release, they have him at a 4.3 40-yard dash, and that's per WVU Sports.
Yeah. So he may go in. Right now, Dom Collins is probably the fastest on the team. I don't know that he's ever been timed with a laser, but he ran a 4.25-ish with a non-laser, hand timing, but that's not usually quite as accurate. But he ran like a 10.8 in the 100. So these two guys are,
give me some Dwayne Galloway Jr. and Dom Collins returning some kicks next year in Morgantown, baby.
The cool thing about Galloway, he's going to be a defensive back. He's 6'1", so he's that longer defensive back that they like to get. I like that about him. He's about 170. I think he's physically, if you look at him physically, he's probably ready to play now physically.
Yeah.
I think, and a matter of fact, that's one of the things that attracted him to West Virginia. I was reading a little bit about him. He thinks he can come in and have a chance to play, on day one. And that was one of the reasons he knew that West Virginia needed help back there. He knew in the secondary, he knew that they were losing some guys and that they had struggled there. So he saw an opportunity, right? So, and speaking of which, they signed 6 DBs today. That was the one position. They signed more DBs than any other position. So they went heavy in the secondary. And then a couple other 4-stars. The other one is one of the other ones is Taylor Brown, a defensive lineman out of Marlboro, Maryland. Upper Marlboro, Maryland, Dr. Henry Wise High School. 6'3", 250. D lineman. Looks like he might need to put on a little bit of weight, unless they plan on playing him at maybe a edge rusher. I don't know. But 93. He's the highest rated recruit in the class, according to 24/7.
Yeah.
With a 93. What do you know about him?
Yeah, really fast. Be curious to see what they do with him going forward. I think real fast and athletic. I think maybe be interested to see a little bit more from 247 on that. I think they're really intrigued by what he can do athletically and just the growth and the potential that's there for him. And so, be curious to see what this next staff, whoever that may be, when they come in, see what they do with him. Really good. I'll tell you somebody I was impressed with too, though, Couz, was that they got their quarterback, Scotty Fox.
Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about him.
He, everybody wants to talk about the quarterback, and I don't know where West Virginia goes at quarterback. There's so much uncertainty around the entire program. But speaking of players in Ohio, 247 and On 3 had him as the number 13 player in the state of Ohio and the number 8 dual threat quarterback in the nation. So that's high praise. Over 3,000 total yards of offense, almost 2,800 yards passing, over 64% completion percentage. So, and he's big, 6'2", 205. So almost kind of reminds you, I want to be careful here, a little bit of Garrett Green, but a bigger version. Been a dual threat, been able to run and throw. But at 6'2", 205, he's obviously got the frame to bid a little bit of bulk on there. So
absolutely.
That's a position, if not all of them are a little uncertain, that's one where there is some curiosity there. So a good point of entry there for the next coach to come in and see him as a quarterback on the roster for sure.
Yeah, and there was, if I'm not mistaken, he posted on his X account a few weeks back, Jonathan, that one of the other outlets actually upped him to a 4-star.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it was him. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was him. It wasn't 24/7, but I think one of the other ones may have bumped him up to a 4-star recruit. But either way, I mean, I really like what I see from him. Like you said, a dual threat, but I think he throws the ball a lot more. Garrett came out of high school. He played in more of an option type offense.
Yeah.
Really didn't learn how to read defenses. I think Scotty's had to throw the ball more in high school. So he should come in a little bit more ahead of the game, so to speak.
I agree with that, but really athletic.
Correct.
But really athletic and can run if he needs to. So, gosh darn, they almost kind of look alike, weirdly enough. So, but I think West Virginia had really focused on. You talked about the defensive backs. They knew going into it that was an area of need as you started to build within the program. Offensive linemen, you've got guys that so some old boys that are tall and big and they like the future of them. West Virginia's done really well at developing linemen in that program. Credit to Matt Moore and those guys there. You got your quarterback, you got your athleticism on the defensive line. So overall, I think you've got a few guys that really just jump out at you and say, I can make some impact. And you've got some guys like you do in every single class that says, hey, in a couple of years, we can develop. And they're excited there. So overall, just really impressed with what they were able to pull off this class and who they were able to keep and who they were able to steal.
How about this young man? Aiden Buchanan from Good Counsel, same high school as Kyle Altuner, by the way, the lineman who signed in the 24 class. Listen to these numbers: 6'8". Now Trey Nair says he's actually 6'9", not 6'8". 310, Now, I think they said today he's more like 330.
Yeah.
So you got 6'9", 330 offensive lineman. Just a massive individual. And
yeah,
now he's only rated as a 3-star, 86th grade, but Michigan was trying really, really hard to flip this kid.
Yeah.
And he didn't bite. He stuck with
his commitment. Bite. And if you know anything at all about high school football, you know that good counsel program, they churn them. They churn them. That's a good program to be in. That's a good program to have your foot in the door, if you will. And so, yeah, he's somebody that is really special. The WVU Sports has him listed at 6'9", 330 pounds.
Okay,
that's a big boy.
Daggone right it is. Holy cow.
That's a big boy.
Jeez. Sean Martin is 6'5" or 6'6", 290, right?
Yeah.
So imagine how big this young man is. Holy cow.
And his teammate also signed, right?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's where I was going next.
Yeah.
Gavin Crawford.
He's a little bit smaller. He's 6'3", 330. I don't know what happened to him. Yeah. But again, it goes, if you're getting, that goes to the good counsel program. And you'd said they've already got they've got one on the team in Kyle Tuner. So yeah, that's a program you're able to make headway in, and you've been able to make headway in. So the camaraderie there, the relationships just makes that transition a little bit easier. So good to see West Virginia continue in that tradition of getting good quality offensive linemen that can grow in the program.
Yeah. And the other 4-star that they signed was Jaleel Hall, a wide receiver out of Monsignor Bonner High School in Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania, 6'4", 185 pounds, according to 24/7, a 90 grade. They have him listed as a top 10 player in the state of PA, and number 45 overall wide receiver in the country. So, and he's long at 6'4". They got him. I see a theme here. They like guys that are 6 foot or up. Unless you're a running back.
Yeah.
Or a safety.
Yeah. Averaged almost 18 yards per catch. So what that tells me is he's using that height a little bit too, and he's not just and at that size, he's probably not just somebody that's catching a screen pass and running. So I like to see that versatility. Almost 70 yards per game receiving, 600 yards as a senior receiving, and you want to be careful on some of those stats too, because you don't know if he's playing in a run oriented offense in high school or how they're doing it. But I like the size out of him as well.
Yeah, and they did. I do want to touch on this. They did get the top 2 players in the state of West Virginia. They got Zay Jackson out of Huntington High School, a 5'10" corner, 5'10", 180. So they landed him, and they also got Tyshawn Dews, who was actually there. If I remember, he was their very first verbal commit for this class.
Yeah, out
of Hurricane High School, a wide receiver, 5'10", 171, about the same size as Jackson, but just on the other side of the ball. Jackson was the number 1 rated player in the state of West Virginia. Dews is number 2 rated player in the state of West Virginia. 2 very talented young men that are going to, hopefully, make an impact for this Mountaineer team.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting here. 5'10", 175, runs a 4.48 40, 4.19 shuttle, a 33-inch vertical, and bench presses 275 pounds.
You're talking about Dews?
Yeah.
He's dad. I follow his dad on social media, and his dad's actually a trainer, physical trainer for high school football players. Does a lot of work with them and stuff, and he's really, really active. And of course, Tyshawn gets the benefit of that. And by the way, he has a younger brother.
Yeah,
that may be even better than him.
Yeah,
and I can't remember his name, Jonathan. You might know it, but
I've seen some highlights and some video. I'd have to go back and look at it, but it runs in the family apparently.
Yeah, he's really good as well. So, but I think he plays I think he'll be playing more. I think he's planning to play on the other side of the ball, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, yeah, this we don't need to, like I said, we're not going to go every single guy, but I did want to touch on a few of them, a few of the highlights. But overall, they ended up with 6 DBs, 5 defensive linemen, a tight end, 5 O linemen, 2 receivers, 1 running back, 1 quarterback, and then state breakdown. You got 6 from Ohio, 4 from Florida, 4 from Maryland, 2 from Pennsylvania, 2 from West Virginia, a Georgia, 1 Tennessee, and 1 Wisconsin. So that's kind of the breakdown from the 24/7 sports site there. I won't see who the Wisconsin guy is. That's kind of an unusual state.
It's tight end.
Jackson Acquarty, the tight end. Yep. 6'7", 225. You had it, man. You were right on top of it.
Yeah.
And they landed the 3 fastest players from the state of Ohio, I think, is what Javon Collin or one of the coaches put on their Twitter account today.
Just overall a good mix, a good balance. And again, considering the circumstances, shows a lot of character on the men and women in the offices that were working it. And they did a really fine job of keeping us together. And I don't know where those coaches end up, if it's at West Virginia or if it's somewhere else. But I think next year or in a year or two, when one of those players makes a huge play on the field, you need to look back and remember that those coaches and underneath tough circumstances did the work for you when they didn't have to, and be appreciative of that.
Now, and look, we all know these kids can transfer if they want to later on down the road, maybe even this year, right? If the new coach comes in, they don't like them, they can hit the portal.
Yep.
No, these national letters of intent don't mean near as much as they used to. But still, when you look when you look at what they did compared to the other 3 schools that don't have coaches, remarkable.
Yep.
I mean, Chris, you talked about all the years you've been covering it. Chris Anderson over at 24/7 said the same thing. He's never seen anything like this in his entire career covering recruiting ever.
Yeah.
So just got to tip your cap to him. And I really hope that the new coach, whoever it may be, gives them a chance, this recruiting staff a chance to stay on, because they knocked it out of the park.
Yep. I completely agree.
A couple more. The other main topic we want to talk about is West Virginia's bowl bid has been announced. But real quick, two little tidbits of information. One, I haven't even had it talked yet about Chad Scott being named the interim coach for the bowl game. That has not even come up. I personally think that was the right move, Jonathan. I think he was probably the most popular coach on the staff among the players and the fans. What are your thoughts on that, real quick?
Yeah, well respected. I think it made sense. Already as offensive coordinator, was involved in a lot of the play calling. With Coons transitioning over to the defensive coordinator, this made sense. Chad was very active on the sidelines throughout the game anyway, knew the personnel, knows the plays, could slide right in and just kind of take over essentially what Neal Brown was doing, right? Head coach and calling plays. So made sense. I thought it was the perfect hire. I think if there's anybody that can rally the troops, he is that guy. He's energetic, full of energy,
and the whole team loves him.
The whole team loves him. So I think that perfect decision for me.
Yeah,
I don't know what happens in the bowl, but I think that's a perfect decision.
Yeah, and there have been a few players, about a handful of players current players that have announced they're entering the portal. But the biggest one came today. As you know, we're recording this on Wednesday. The biggest one was Josiah Trotter, the star freshman linebacker. To me, I mean, there's a handful of players, a couple of players that I thought were extremely, extremely critical to try to keep. He was at the top of that list. But you can't blame the young man for doing what he thinks is best for him. I'm sure he's going to have an opportunity to make killer NIL money somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere. And maybe he may have come to West Virginia to play for Neal Brown, and now he can't do that. So you've got to do nothing but wish the young man the best. But that was, to me, that's a big loss. What are your thoughts on Josiah Trotter?
Yes, it's a huge loss, but I try and take it with the, it was going to happen mentality.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of making a change, I think West Virginia was going to have their back against the wall with him anyway. And I want to be careful that I'm not suggesting that he would have just taken any money and left West Virginia, even if Neal had stayed. But I think he would have been tempted because they were going to throw some money. He's that good. Yep. He's that good. Yeah, it stinks. But I think you just have to, and it's important for people to not be overly emotional or to freak out. It's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I've said to you on air and off air, the portal works both ways. It takes away, but it gives as well. Yep. And so for all we know, as we're sitting here right now recording it, even though we do not want to lose any player, there is possibilities of adding. And there is also the possibility of once West Virginia hires somebody that he could come back. Typically doesn't happen. But it has happened in other places. Mm-hmm. I don't blame him with the uncertainty. If it is the end there for West Virginia with him, gosh darn it, I enjoyed it. Heck of a football player, by all accounts, just a great young man. Yep. And he's going to do well no matter where he goes. We'll be rooting like heck for him.
Absolutely. And then the last topic we'll touch on is West Virginia's bowl destination. Now, some fans are not too excited about this. It's the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. Jonathan, I saw your post on social media, and just like you, I have not heard of Scooters Coffee. So I'm not even sure if
we would be open to a sponsor, maybe, or some samples, or so Scooters Coffee.
Absolutely.
I love coffee.
Me too.
So Couz and I love it. So we would be open to try it.
It may be the best coffee in the world for all we know, but
I've never heard of it.
If anybody from Scooters Coffee is listening,
hit my DMs.
Absolutely, baby. We would gladly promote your coffee.
Is that what the young kids say today? Is hit my DMs or something like that?
I'm not even sure what they say.
They're open. Maybe I think I hear that.
I'm trying to. What is it? Trying to think of what my daughters say.
Yeah, me too.
Shoot me an Insta, maybe. I can't remember. I don't know, man.
So, I'm old school. Send me an email.
Funny story, real quick. The fans will enjoy this too. You know, I'm a 44-year-old man, right? I got a teenage daughter and three daughters. One of them's a teenager. Two of them's a teenager. The other one's grown. But anyway, we put up some new lights for Christmas, and I said, man, those lights are sick. Sick is the new term for cool, awesome, whatever.
Yeah.
Now they say sick, right? Yeah. So I said that the other. My daughter, she just started giggling. I said, "What are you laughing about?" She said, "You sound like a teenage boy, Daddy."
Yeah. So while we're revealing age, I'm 42. I've got one daughter that's a teenager, and I can't keep up with all of it. So we'll just say that we are available in the direct message Scooters call. So
on X,
hit us up.
That's it, baby. Anyway, all right. They're playing Memphis, the number 25 ranked Memphis Tigers, a good football team from the American Conference, a team who just beat the brakes off of Tulane, didn't they?
At Tulane, 34-24, and they were in control.
And by the way, ironically, Ryan Silverfield, who's their I think it's Ryan Silverfield, who's their coach, just so happened to pop up on one of the hot boards today.
Yep.
About almost the same time this was announced.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be? I don't think he's real high on the priority list, but wouldn't it be something if he ended up being the coach for what he wouldn't be coaching that game? But anyway.
And I saw a snippet today of him being interviewed, asking about the signing day and asking about the bowl game. It was a minute and a half, and he kept talking about the storied program of West Virginia and what an honor it was to play. And I kind of thought,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he did pop up. Jamie Chadwell popped up on it a day or two ago. He wasn't on the original one, the one I look at anyway. And then Silverfield popped up on it today. So some two of the more sought after G5. Both of those guys will end up landing P4 jobs at some point. Will it be at West Virginia? Who knows? We will see. But anyway, well, man, is there anything else we need to cover before we say adios to these fine folks?
Yeah, I don't think so. I would just say about that bowl. I'm interested. Quickly,
Too,
I'll say
actually.
it is exciting. I think to play somebody that you really don't have much familiarity. That's always been a hard word for me to say. You don't know much about Memphis. We don't play them. West Virginia doesn't. So number 25 in the country. They are coming off beating Tulane, who was number 17 at Tulane and a game was really never in doubt. Then I'd also say in terms of on the West Virginia side, Couz, and I tweeted this earlier today, I'm actually thrilled about it. I think if I just said, ways that we can show our appreciation to this staff for the hard work they did for signing day. And you know what? One way is to support them like heck in this game.
Yeah.
Because they gave a lot this whole season, their whole time here.
Mm-hmm.
But they gave a lot for this recruiting class. And I think now's the time for West Virginia to kind of thank them and their support in this game and encourage.
Yeah.
And then it's also one more time to see some seniors and some players that we care dearly about watching. It's going to be last time you see maybe a Wyatt Milam, Garrett Green. I mean, I could just go on and on. Malone. Yeah.
I doubt Trotter will be playing, but
Jaheim White's, who knows? But all these guys, seniors or not, it could possibly be the last time that you get a chance to watch them and support them, especially the seniors and everything that those young men have given to this program. And I'm hopeful that everybody cannot just say, you know what, it's a Scooter's Coffee Frisco Bowl. It's at 9:00 at night. Listen to me. Who cares? Watch them, support them, get behind them.
We only get 13 a year.
It's the least you could do. And just remember, when you don't really care about the Frisco Bowl, you probably care about some of those recruits that we just talked about. So get behind them.
Yeah. And a couple of, Wren said they wanted an early game so that they could get the game over with, get the new coach in and everything before the transfer portal closes.
Yep.
So that's big. So this will allow them to do that. And here's what I was thinking too, Jonathan, if this team had finished 6-6, Neal was still the coach. We didn't have the coaching change and all this going on, and we were playing in this game, I would not be interested. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Right.
And if we lost the game, it would be a disaster.
Oh, yeah.
Right. If we lose this game now, who cares? I mean, I hate to say, you want to win, don't get me wrong. But you're getting a new coach and a new staff more than likely anyway. A new coach, definitely new staff, probably too.
Yeah.
You lose it, who cares? It's not a big deal. They can go out there, play loose, have fun, no pressure. And if you win it, you know what? It's another 7-win season. It's a winning season. Goes into books as a winning year. You beat a top 25 team. Neal has it. Well, Neal wouldn't get it, but and it's another thing. You get to watch Chad Scott run the offense.
Yeah.
What's that going to look like?
Yeah, I'm interested in it. I think it's a game where we can sit back and just enjoy it. Right?
No
you want to
pressure.
win. You want to win, but we can just and listen, we all get caught up in it. With that, it sounds good now, and all of a sudden you're down 7-3 in the second quarter, and we're fired up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But your points are 100% valid, and we can just sit back and enjoy it. And like I said, some of these guys, and I don't want to name names because I'm going to leave somebody out unfairly. But they've given a lot to this program, and they've meant a lot to watch, and it's going to be the last time you see them. So I would just say, sit down, enjoy it, have fun with it, and get ready for the excitement of something fresh and new next year.
Yep. I'm exactly with you. And by the way, for those of you who catch this before Friday, don't forget to tune in. The men's basketball team will be playing Georgetown Friday night at 7 p.m. on ESPN2, I think. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. So don't forget about that too. Our men's basketball team is has a chance to do some great things this year. So tune in for that.
Yeah.
Tough loss for the women's team against 5th-ranked Texas the other night.
But they look good.
They did.
Much like the men's team, they never quit. They were down double digits in that game and cut it to 5, and they're feisty.
Yeah. So I think they can still have a special year too. So there are some positive things going on around the West Virginia athletics programs. And, we got baseball season coming up with Steve Sabins as a new coach. So I'm kind of excited about that too, to see what they can do. So a lot of cool things, man, in and around West Virginia sports. So anyway, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Don't be sure to check us out on X. I'm at Couz 206. For those of you listening, it's COUZ 206. Jonathan is at Jonathan with no H, K Martin. And then you can find us, this show, the Golden Blue Breakdown Show, at GB Breakdown _ if you want to hit us up there. Appreciate everybody tuning into the show. Thanks again to Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner for sponsoring the show. If you need a personal injury or medical malpractice attorney in West Virginia or Virginia, go to yourlawyeryourvoice.com, and they will assist you. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a top shelf day in Q Country Roads.